Look, I never asked to be transported into a cheesy romance novel, especially as the villainess. You know, the petty, jealous character destined to get exiled, humiliated, or worse. But here I am, in a world of rich CEOs, sweet heroines, and over-the-top drama. My plan? Avoid the plot like the plague. And by avoid, I mean focus on what truly matters. Food. So when I befriended Alex, the handsome CEO/male lead, it wasn't because I wanted to steal his heart. Oh no. I wanted the free dinners. 5-star restaurants, gourmet dishes, exotic desserts. That's my kind of happily ever after. I'm not flirting. I'm ordering half the menu. Unfortunately, the novel's actual heroine, Sarah, doesn't seem thrilled about our little foodie friendship. Between her growing jealousy and my secret food blog, where I may or may not have been documenting our dinners under the title Dinners with a CEO, things are spiraling faster than a rogue souffle. But here's the kicker. Alex isn't playing by the book either. Somewhere between sharing dishes and watching me devour truffle pasta like it's my last meal, he's starting to look at me differently. Like I'm more than just a food-obsessed disaster. And now I've got a problem. Because while I swore I was only here for the food, it's starting to feel like something's cooking between us. And for once, it's not just the steak. Help. Story begins. Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel. Like, share, and subscribe to join our channel's journey. Chapter 1. Croissants and Catastrophe. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Warm, buttery croissants. Somewhere nearby, there were pastries fresh out of the oven, the kind that made your soul sigh. My stomach growled so loudly that I startled myself awake. Except, this wasn't my bed. My bed didn't have curtains or embroidery. Our pillows so fluffy they looked stolen from a cloud. I sat up, blinking at the room around me. It was enormous, gilded, and screaming rich people drama. Pastel walls, gold trim, a chandelier that probably cost more than my car. This wasn't my life. My apartment had peeling wallpaper and a toaster that set off the smoke alarm every Tuesday. I glanced down and froze. My pajamas, an old concert t-shirt and plaid shorts were gone, replaced by a lace nightgown that could only be described as a Victorian fever dream. What the? A knock at the door interrupted my freakout. Lady Liliana, a voice called, smooth and professional. Your morning tea and pastries are ready. Lady Liliana? Who in the great croissant-filled cosmos was that? My name was Lily. Just Lily. The person who woke up at noon and ate leftover pizza straight from the fridge. Not some duchess sipping tea at dawn. Before I could protest, the door opened, and a maid swept in, balancing a silver tray. On it, a teapot, a delicate porcelain cup, and a plate piled high with pastries. My mouth watered. Blah, thanks, I managed, reaching for the tray like a starving hyena. Lady Liliana, the maid gasped. Please, you must sit properly. Your mother insists on decorum at all times. I froze, a croissant halfway to my mouth. My mother? The Duchess has requested your presence at breakfast with the Duke in 15 minutes, she said, fussing with my hair like I was a misbehaving Barbie doll. She reminded me to emphasize that you are to comport yourself as a lady. A lady? I wasn't a lady. I was just some random girl who spent her weekends Googling the best taco trucks in town. But the words Duke and Duchess pinged in my brain with a sinking sense of familiarity. I stared at the maid, then at the room, then at the croissants. Slowly, realization hit me like a frying pan to the face. Whoa, no, I whispered. This wasn't my life. This wasn't even my world. I wasn't just Lily anymore. I was Liliana, the spoiled, petty, and ultimately humiliated villainess of a cheesy romance novel I'd hate read during a particularly desperate weekend. A novel where the male lead, Alexander Valcour, the aloof and disgustingly rich CEO, fell in love with the sweet, perfect heroine, Sarah. Meanwhile, Liliana spent most of the book being jealous, sabotaging Sarah, and eating a heaping plate of public disgrace by the end. And now, thanks to whatever cosmic joke had dropped me into this mess, I was that doomed villainess. The real stakes. 15 minutes later, I was sitting at a table the size of a small planet, flanked by two people who looked like they'd stepped out of a Downton Abbey casting call. My parents, the Duke and Duchess, were every bit as stiff and intimidating as you'd expect from people who probably referred to soup as a course. The Valcour heir will be at today's luncheon, my mother said, her expression pinched. You must secure his favor, Liliana. Your future and our family's reputation depends on it. Great, No pressure. If I followed the plot of the book, my future was already decided. I'd chase Alex like some desperate fangirl, try to sabotage his romance with Sarah, and end up the laughingstock of the aristocracy. That was my fate. But here's the thing. I didn't care about Alex, or Sarah, or fancy luncheons for that matter. What I cared about was the food. This world was teeming with extravagant banquets, 5-star restaurants, and enough culinary delights to make my foodie heart skip a beat. In my old life, I'd been stuck scouring Yelp reviews and saving up for the occasional splurge meal. But here, I had access to everything. Gourmet soufflés, fresh truffles, exotic delicacies. It was a buffet of dreams, and I wasn't about to waste it chasing some brooding CEO. The plan was simple. Befriend Alex, prove I wasn't a threat, and avoid getting banished to social Siberia. Use my newfound villainous status to eat my way through this world's high-class cuisine. The stakes were clear. If I messed this up, I'd lose my chance to live a life of culinary luxury. And if I played my cards right, I might even figure out how to get back to my old life, preferably with a stomach full of foie gras as the Duke lectured me about ladylike behavior. I reached for a scone, slathered it with clotted cream, and took a big bite. If I was going to survive as Liliana, I'd need my strength and a lot of snacks. The first step. Later that morning, as the maid stuffed me into a gown that could double as a circus tent, I went over my strategy. Step 1. Get close to Alex without looking desperate. Step 2. Suggest dinner at one of the city's finest restaurants. Step 3. Order everything. Perfect, I muttered, adjusting the ridiculous hat perched on my head. Operation Eat My Way Out of Trouble starts today. The maid gave me a puzzled look, but I didn't care. I was done being the villainess everyone hated. If I had to play a role in this story, I'd be the foodie heroine instead. And maybe, just maybe, I'd figure out how to survive this ridiculous romance novel world. But first, lunch. Chapter 2. Dinner with a CEO sort of. If there's one thing I learned in my first 24 hours as Liliana, it's this: corsets are evil. By the time I made it to the grand dining hall for lunch with Alexander Valcour, my ribs felt like they'd been shoved through a pasta maker. But none of that mattered. Not when I was about to meet the man who held the keys to my plan. And by the man, I mean the wallet. The grand entrance. The dining hall was as over-the-top as you'd expect: vaulted ceilings, crystal chandeliers, a table so long it needed its own zip code. And there he was, sitting at the far end, looking exactly like I remembered from the novel. Tall, dark-haired, and wearing a suit that screamed, "I make more money in a day than you do in a lifetime." Alexander Valcour. The aloof, brooding CEO period. The male lead every reader swooned over. I, however, wasn't here to swoon. I was here to eat. "Lady Liliana," he greeted, standing as I approached. His voice was low, smooth, and just the right amount of intimidating. He offered a polite smile, the kind that said, "Let's get this over with." "Mr. Valcour," I replied with what I hoped was a ladylike nod. "Thank you for agreeing to this lunch. I was so looking forward to the bah." My eyes darted to the table, where a parade of covered silver dishes waited to be unveiled. Culinary delights. His brow furrowed slightly, but he said nothing. Good. Let him think I was eccentric. It would only make my plan easier. The lunch begins. The first course was soup. Creamy, golden, with just a drizzle of something green on top. A footman placed the bowl in front of me with all the reverence of a priest presenting holy relics. I picked up my spoon, inhaling the aroma. Truffle oil. Whoa, this was going to be good. Alexander cleared his throat, breaking my trance. "I trust you've been well, Lady Liliana." "Whoa, absolutely," I replied, scooping up the first bite. I mean, who wouldn't be with food like this? I took a sip, and fireworks went off in my brain. The soup was velvety, rich, and so decadent it could have been served with a side of guilt. "Exquisite," I murmured, completely forgetting Alexander's existence for a moment. When I looked up, he was staring at me like I'd just grown a second head. "Is something wrong?" I asked, dabbing my mouth with a napkin like a proper lady. Or at least trying to. He shook his head. "No, it's just unusual to see someone so enthusiastic about soup." "Soup is the foundation of civilization," I declared, waving my spoon for emphasis. "A good soup can change your life." The corner of his mouth twitched, almost like he was suppressing a smile. "Good. Progress." The main course. Chaos ensues. The second course was unveiled with much fanfare. Roast duck with a glaze so shiny it could double as a mirror. "Whoa, wow," I breathed, leaning forward. "Look at that skin. Perfectly crisp. Did you know the key to good roast duck is rendering the fat properly? Otherwise, it's a disaster. Too chewy." Alexander raised an eyebrow. I can't say I've ever given it much thought. Well, you should, I said, grabbing my knife and fork. Proper duck preparation is an art form. Oh, and you have to try the juice. It's probably the best part. I carved off a piece and, without thinking, slid it onto his plate. There was a moment of silence. A very long moment. Did you just serve me? He asked, his voice filled with a mix of confusion and amusement. Of course, I said, waving my fork at him. You can't just sit there and eat like a robot. Food is meant to be shared. Here, take a bite. To my shock, he actually did. Slowly, like he wasn't sure what to expect, but he ate it. Well, I prompted. It's good, he admitted. Good, I gasped. That's all you have to say about a duck this perfect? Ugh, you're hopeless. He chuckled softly, the sound low and warm. And you're unique. Dessert and an unexpected offer? By the time dessert arrived, individual soufflés served with a flourish. I'd completely forgotten this was supposed to be a serious lunch. Oh, look at the rise on these, I gushed, peering into the ramekin. The chef knows what they're doing. A bad soufflé collapses the second you touch it. But this, Lady Liliana, Alexander interrupted, his tone measured. Forgive me, but may I ask, what, exactly, is your goal here? I blinked at him, spoon halfway to my mouth. My goal? Yes, he said, leaning forward slightly. Most people who engage with me have a particular agenda. A business proposal, a favor, even a marriage contract. But you seem more interested in the food. Well, yeah, I said without thinking. The food's amazing. Why would I waste time on anything else? He stared at me, his expression unreadable. For a split second, panic crept in. Had I blown it? Did he think I was some kind of lunatic? Then, to my surprise, he smiled. A real, genuine smile. You're very refreshing, he said. Thanks, I said, trying not to blush. So, does that mean you'll take me to that new seafood restaurant next week? What? Whoa, come on, I said, grinning. You're a wealthy, well-connected guy. You've probably got reservations to all the best places. Help a girl out. For a moment, he looked completely stunned. Then he shook his head, laughing softly. I'll consider it, he said. Mission accomplished. As I left the dining hall that afternoon, my stomach full and my plan firmly on track, I couldn't help but feel smug. Step 1. Befriend Alex? Done. Step 2. Secure more fancy dinners? Almost there. Step 3. Eat my way to villainous survival? Well, on my way. I grinned to myself, already dreaming of my next meal. Because if I had to be stuck in this world, I was going to make it delicious. Chapter 3. A second helping of chaos. The plan was simple: convince Alexander Valcour, Mr. Brooding billionaire himself, to take me to the most exclusive seafood restaurant in the city. Step 2 of Operation Eat My Way Through This World was already underway. Unfortunately, no one warned me that Sarah, the heroine of this ridiculous romance novel, would make an unscheduled appearance. The setup? It started with a letter. A very formal, very fancy letter. Gold wax seal. Embossed crest. The whole shebang. The kind of thing that made you think it contained an invitation to a royal ball. Or maybe an assassin's hit list. When I unfolded it, though, the words were simple enough. Lady Liliana, Mr. Valcour requests the pleasure of your company for dinner tomorrow evening at La Marée Bleue. Transportation will be arranged. Bingo. I let out a triumphant little squeal and hugged the letter to my chest. La Marée Bleue was the restaurant. Michelin stars, waitlist 3 months long, and dishes so artistic you felt bad eating them, but not bad enough to stop. Tomorrow, I whispered to myself. It's happening? The fancy seafood feast of my dreams. I was so caught up imagining towers of oysters and lobster dripping with butter that I didn't even consider the possibility of a surprise guest. Dinner at La Marée Bleue. The next evening, I arrived in a carriage that probably cost more than my entire real-world college education. La Marée Bleue was everything I dreamed of. White-gloved servers, candlelit tables, and an ambience that said, "You definitely can afford this." Alexander was already waiting at the table, looking effortlessly polished. Of course, he probably woke up like that. Lady Liliana, he greeted, standing as I approached. Alex, I replied, grinning as I plopped into my chair. You don't mind if I call you Alex, right? Mr. Valcour is way too stiff for dinner. He blinked, startled, but then nodded. As you wish. So far, so good. I was halfway through the wine list when the bomb dropped. Alex. I froze, my hand hovering over the menu. That voice. Sweet, lilting, dripping with heroine energy. I turned slowly, like someone in a horror movie realizing the killer was right behind them. And there she was, Sarah, blonde and glowing, wearing a dress so delicate it probably cost a small fortune. Sarah, Alex said, standing again. His tone was polite, but there was no mistaking the hint of surprise. I didn't expect to see you here. I was just dining with friends, she said, her doe-like eyes flicking to me. Her smile faltered for a split second before she added, "And who is this?" "Lady Liliana," Alex said, gesturing to me. "We're having dinner." Her eyes widened ever so slightly. To her credit, she recovered quickly, flashing a bright smile. "Oh, how lovely. May I join you?" Before I could protest, she was already pulling up a chair. Three's a crowd. Dinner quickly devolved into chaos. I tried to focus on the food: perfectly seared scallops, buttery prawns, and a delicate crab bisque that made me want to weep. But Sarah was proving to be an unexpected complication. "So, Lady Liliana," she said, her tone light and friendly. "How do you know Alex?" "Oh, we're just food buddies," I said, waving my fork. "Food buddies?" she repeated, her brows knitting together in confusion. "Yep," I said, popping a piece of shrimp into my mouth. "I'm really here for the cuisine. Alex just happens to have great taste in restaurants." Sarah's smile tightened. "I see." Meanwhile, Alex looked like he couldn't decide whether to laugh or bury his face in his hands. The wine fiasco. By the time the sommelier arrived with the wine pairings, the tension was thick enough to cut with a steak knife. "This pairs beautifully with the lobster," the sommelier said, pouring a crisp white wine into my glass. "Oh, actually," Sarah interjected, her tone just a little too bright. "Lobster pairs better with a Chardonnay, especially one with buttery notes." I raised an eyebrow. "Well, sure, but a Riesling brings out the sweetness of the lobster meat. It's all about balance." Sarah's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "That's an interesting perspective." "It's not a perspective," I said, swirling my glass. "It's a fact." Alex coughed, clearly trying to smother a laugh. Dessert and damage control. By the time dessert arrived, a towering souffle that made my inner foodie swoon, Sarah was visibly on edge. "So, Alex," she said, leaning toward him, "have you given any thought to our project for the children's hospital? I was hoping we could meet this week to finalize the plans." Before Alex could respond, I blurted out, "Wait, you do charity work?" Sarah blinked at me, startled. "Of course. Why wouldn't I?" "No reason," I said quickly, shoveling a spoonful of souffle into my mouth. "I just thought you were more into, swooning over Alex and crying prettily when things go wrong." The words slipped out before I could stop them. I froze, my eyes darting to Alex, and then to Sarah. To my surprise, Alex burst out laughing. Sarah, however, did not look amused. Aftermath. By the time the dinner ended, Sarah was practically radiating frost. She stood, her movements stiff but polite. "It was lovely meeting you, Lady Liliana," she said, though her tone suggested otherwise. "Likewise," I said cheerfully, popping the last bite of souffle into my mouth. As she left, I turned to Alex, who was still chuckling softly. "Well," I said, brushing crumbs off my dress, "that went great, right?" He shook his head, clearly amused. "You're unbelievable." "Thanks," I said, grinning. "So, where are we going next?" "Next?" "Yeah," I said, leaning forward eagerly. "There's this new steakhouse I've been dying to try." Mission semi-accomplished. As I climbed back into the carriage, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of guilt. Sure, I'd survived another dinner with Alex, but Sarah's reaction worried me. If she started seeing me as a threat, things could get messy. Still, I had a belly full of souffle and a list of restaurants to tackle. For now, that was enough. Step 3, I whispered to myself, leaning back against the plush seat. Avoid heroine drama and stick to the food. But deep down, I had a sinking feeling it wasn't going to be that easy. Chapter 4. A heroine's green-eyed moment. The moment Sarah stepped into the steakhouse, it became clear she hadn't come to enjoy the food. Her sharp eyes darted from Alex to me, then to the candlelit ambience of the table. This wasn't just a casual dinner to her, it was a battlefield. Seating dynamics. The first skirmish. The hostess led us to a cozy corner booth, but the seating arrangement turned into a silent war. "Lily," Alex said, gesturing to the seat next to him. But before I could move, Sarah swooped in with the precision of a falcon. "Oh, I'll sit here, Alex," she chirped, sliding into the seat beside him with a practiced ease. I shrugged and plopped into the seat across from them. "Fine by me. I'd have the best view of the food." The menu maneuver. The waiter appeared with menus, and I dove in with the enthusiasm of a kid in a candy store. Truffle mashed potatoes? Braised short ribs? A triple cheese souffle? Yes, yes, and yes. Sarah, however, seemed less focused on the menu and more on watching Alex. What are you getting, Alex? She asked, leaning closer to him than was strictly necessary. I'm thinking the filet mignon. Alex replied casually, his eyes flicking to me. What about you, Lily? I barely glanced up. Probably everything that isn't nailed down. Sarah's smile faltered. Don't you think it's important to choose something refined? She said sweetly. After all, we're in one of the city's top-rated restaurants. Refined, I echoed, blinking. Oh no, I go for maximum flavor, not maximum elegance. If I could order the entire appetizer menu as my main course, I would. Alex chuckled. That actually sounds like a solid plan. Sarah's knuckles tightened around her menu. Wine wars. When the sommelier arrived, Sarah seized her moment. Alex, she said, flipping her hair like a shampoo commercial. I was just reading about the perfect wine pairing for filet mignon. A robust Bordeaux would really bring out the smoky undertones. Sounds good, Alex said, glancing at me. What about you, Lily? Oh, I don't do wine, I said breezily. I need my taste buds at full capacity for the food. The sommelier looked mildly offended, and Sarah looked smug. It's about sophistication, she said. Wine elevates the dining experience. I smirked. I think the food does a pretty good job of that all on its own. But you enjoy your fermented grape juice. Alex coughed to hide a laugh. Sarah's smile tightened. The main course showdown. When the food arrived, I was in heaven. The steak was so tender it practically melted on my tongue. And the garlic herb butter made me want to write poetry. This is amazing, I declared, holding up a forkful for emphasis. Sarah, you've got to try this. Sarah's gaze flicked from the steak to Alex, who was watching me with a mixture of amusement and curiosity. I'm fine, she said tightly, cutting into her own fillet. Suit yourself, I said, popping another bite into my mouth. As the meal went on, I noticed Sarah's mood deteriorating. She tried to engage Alex in conversation about a charity gala, but he kept getting distracted by my commentary on the food. Do you think they roasted the carrots separately from the beef? I mused aloud, because the caramelization is spot on. Alex, taste this. To my surprise, he actually reached over and tried a bite. Not bad, he said, nodding. You've got a good eye for flavor. Sarah looked like she wanted to stab her steak, and maybe me, with her fork. Dessert and the breaking point. By the time dessert arrived, Sarah was on edge. So, Alex, she began, her tone overly casual, what are your plans for the weekend? Perhaps we could attend the spring charity auction together. I'm not sure yet, Alex said, glancing at me. Lily, didn't you say there's a new bistro opening downtown? Oh yeah, I said, perking up. They've got a 7-course tasting menu. I was thinking of checking it out. Sounds interesting, Alex said. Sarah's jaw tightened. You're spending a lot of time together, aren't you? I blinked. Well, yeah. We've got a mutual love of food. It's just surprising, Sarah said, her smile brittle. Alex usually prefers quieter company. Alex raised an eyebrow. Lily's company isn't exactly loud. Except when I'm chewing, I said, deadpan. Alex burst out laughing, but Sarah didn't find it nearly as funny. The ultimatum. As we left the restaurant, Sarah pulled me aside, her expression tight. Lily, she said quietly, I know you said you're not interested in Alex, but your actions, they tell a different story. I blinked. My actions? Sarah, I just spent the entire dinner critiquing the food like a wannabe Gordon Ramsay. What part of that screams romantic interest? She crossed her arms. You've monopolized his attention. He used to confide in me, but now it's all about you. If you're truly not interested, then back off. Her words stung more than I wanted to admit. I'm not trying to take him away from you, I said, my voice softer than before. I just really like food, and Alex happens to know all the best places to get it. Sarah's gaze softened slightly, but the tension didn't fully leave her shoulders. Just remember, she said quietly, this is my story. The aftermath. As I watched her walk away, a strange pang of guilt settled in my chest. I wasn't trying to steal her spotlight, or her love interest, but maybe, without meaning to, I'd stumbled into the role of rival anyway. I sighed. Romance novels were so much more complicated when you were living in one, but I couldn't let that distract me. My mission was clear. Avoid being the villainess, enjoy the food, and stay out of the drama. Too bad the drama had other plans. Chapter 5. The Unplanned Group Dinner. By the time our next dinner rolled around, I had an inkling that Sarah wasn't done with her crusade. Alex, oblivious as ever, had texted me about a new upscale Italian place that just opened. I, of course, accepted immediately. I'd heard their hand-rolled gnocchi was life-changing. But when we arrived, surprise, surprise, Sarah was already waiting for us at the table. Sarah, I said, trying to mask my confusion, didn't expect to see you here. She smiled, her expression so sugary sweet it could have given me a cavity. Alex invited me. He thought it'd be nice for all of us to catch up. Isn't that right, Alex? Alex, who'd clearly been roped into this ambush, scratched the back of his neck. Yeah. I figured you two could bond. I resisted the urge to facepalm. This wasn't bonding. This was a setup. The table tango. The waiter seated us at a small, round table that felt uncomfortably intimate. Alex sat between us, an unwitting referee in this silent competition. Should we start with appetizers? Alex asked, flipping open his menu. I hear their burrata is incredible, Sarah said, leaning slightly toward him. Oh, burrata sounds good, I said. But we should definitely get the arancini too. And maybe the antipasto platter. Sarah's lips pursed. That's a lot of food. Not if we share, I said, giving her my best winning smile. Right, Alex? Sure, Alex said, oblivious to the tension. I'm game. Sarah's smile strained further. Well, if you think it's necessary. Appetizer wars. When the food arrived, it was clear I was in my element. The burrata was a cloud of creamy perfection. The arancini were crispy on the outside and gooey on the inside, and the antipasto platter was an edible work of art. Oh my God, I said around a mouthful of prosciutto. This is unreal. Alex, you have to try this. I speared a piece of melon wrapped in prosciutto and held it out to him. To my surprise, he leaned in and took the bite directly off my fork. Sarah's hand froze mid-reach for a crostini. You know, she said, her voice tight. Alex usually doesn't share food like that. Alex shrugged. It's just food. I swallowed my bite and grinned. Exactly. Food is meant to be shared. It's like a universal love language. Sarah's expression darkened, but she quickly masked it with a polite smile. Speaking of universal languages, Alex, did you hear about the charity gala next weekend? I was thinking we could go together. Whoa, Alex said, glancing at me. I might already have plans. With Lily? Sarah asked, her tone a little sharper than intended. Actually, yeah, Alex said. She mentioned this food festival downtown. It sounded interesting. Sarah's fork clattered against her plate. Main course, the gloves come off. By the time the main courses arrived, the tension at the table was thicker than the restaurant's signature Alfredo sauce. Sarah ordered the lobster ravioli, Alex went for the osso buco, and I, naturally, chose the wild mushroom risotto. This risotto, I said, my eyes practically rolling back in my head, is a revelation. Sarah, you've got to try it. She gave me a tight-lipped smile. I'm fine with my ravioli, thanks. Suit yourself, I said, shoveling another spoonful into my mouth. Alex leaned over. Let me try. I slid my plate toward him without hesitation. Be my guest. He took a bite and nodded appreciatively. That's amazing. I beamed. Right? It's like they infused it with pure happiness. Sarah's knuckles whitened around her fork. Alex, you should try the ravioli too, she said, her tone forced. Oh, I'm good, Alex said, still savoring the risotto. If looks could kill, I'd have been reduced to a pile of breadcrumbs on the spot. Dessert the final straw. By the time dessert rolled around, Sarah was visibly seething, though she tried to hide it behind a facade of polite disinterest. Do you want to split the tiramisu? Alex asked me, completely ignoring the dagger Sarah was shooting in my direction. Split? I echoed. Absolutely not. Tiramisu is a solo mission. Alex laughed. Fair enough. I'll get my own. Sarah, who had ordered a sorbet trio that she was barely touching, finally snapped. You know, she said, her voice cutting through the laughter like a knife. It's really interesting how close you two have gotten so quickly. Alex frowned. What do you mean? Oh, nothing, Sarah said, her tone laced with faux innocence. It's just surprising. You usually don't warm up to people so fast, Alex. It's not surprising, I said, wiping a bit of mascarpone from my lip. Food has a way of bringing people together. Sarah's smile was ice cold. Is that what this is about? Food? Of course, I said brightly. What else would it be about? Alex looked between us, clearly sensing the undercurrent of hostility, but unsure how to address it. Sarah, are you okay? He asked, his tone genuinely concerned. Oh, I'm fine, Sarah said, her voice tight. I just hope you're not forgetting who your real friends are, Alex. The fallout. When the check arrived, Alex insisted on paying, as usual, but the air at the table was so tense it felt like the calm before a storm. As we stepped outside, Sarah pulled Alex aside, her voice low but urgent. Alex, she said, I know you think this is harmless, but it's not. Lily's, she's not who you think she is. What are you talking about? Alex asked, frowning. Sarah hesitated, glancing at me. She's taking advantage of you. Can't you see that? I blinked, genuinely taken aback. Taking advantage? Sarah, I'm here for the food, not Alex. That's exactly the problem, Sarah snapped. You're so focused on food that you don't even realize what you're doing to him. Alex sighed. Sarah, I appreciate your concern, but I think you're overreacting. Lily's just being herself. And honestly, I like that about her. Sarah looked like she'd been slapped. Without another word, she turned and walked away, leaving Alex and me standing awkwardly on the sidewalk. Well, I said, breaking the silence, that went well. Alex gave me a look. Do you think she's right? About what? About you taking advantage of me? I hesitated, guilt tugging at my chest. I mean, maybe a little? But hey, at least I'm honest about it. Alex laughed, the tension easing slightly. Fair enough. As we walked to his car, I couldn't help but wonder if Sarah's jealousy was a sign of bigger trouble ahead, or just the beginning of a love triangle I had absolutely no intention of joining. Chapter 6. The Foodie Confession and the Fallout. The next few days after the group dinner debacle felt like a minefield. Every time I checked my phone, there was another text from Alex, usually about a new restaurant he'd found or a food event happening around town. And every time, I couldn't help but feel a little guilty. Sure, I was still just in it for the food, but something about Sarah's words kept lingering in the back of my mind. Maybe I had been too flippant. Maybe my just here for the food mantra was starting to rub people the wrong way. But before I could stew on it for too long, Alex sent another message. Hey, I've got a new spot lined up for tonight. I promise it's not some high-end culinary nonsense, just a solid diner with incredible comfort food. You in? I couldn't resist. The thought of greasy, perfect fries and a towering milkshake was all the convincing I needed. The diner disaster. I arrived at the diner first, scanning the retro-style interior with its shiny chrome accents and neon signs. A far cry from the 5-star dining I'd been indulging in. But the food promised to be worth it. When Alex walked in, he immediately looked out of place. Tall, well-dressed, and generally too polished for the greasy spoon vibe. I suppressed a grin as he walked toward me. I'm not sure this place is up to my usual standards, he said, looking around warily. Hey, I said with a teasing grin, if the fries are good, everything else will follow. He raised an eyebrow but sat down, nodding. Fine, I trust you. What do you recommend? Everything on the menu is a gold mine, I said, already looking at the menu with enthusiasm. But if you want to go full on comfort food, I'd suggest the triple-decker club sandwich and a side of onion rings. Trust me, you'll be hooked. Alex sighed dramatically, picking up the menu. Okay. If I don't like it, you owe me a 5-star meal next time. You've got yourself a deal, I said, practically bouncing in my seat. But fair warning, you might never want to leave this place. The unexpected confession. The food came quickly, and within minutes, Alex was digging into his club sandwich with an enthusiasm I hadn't expected. I was halfway through my own plate of greasy fries, savoring every bite, when Alex suddenly put his fork down and stared at me. Lily, he said, voice serious, can I ask you something? I paused mid-bite, raising an eyebrow. Sure, what's up? I know you've told me before that you're not interested in romance, he began slowly, but you're spending so much time with me, and I don't want to overstep. I froze, fry halfway to my mouth, suddenly aware of the weight of his words. Wait, are you asking if I'm into you? Alex looked flustered. I mean, yeah, kinda. I really enjoyed spending time with you, but I need to know if this is just about food or something else. I blinked, my brain scrambling to catch up. This was it. The moment I had feared. The moment I had been dreading without even realizing it. I wasn't supposed to be the other woman in some romance novel love triangle. And yet, here I was at the epicenter of one. Well, I exhaled, setting my fry down carefully. Here's the deal. Alex leaned in, clearly eager for my response. I'm only here for the food, I said, deadpan, unable to stop the burst of laughter that followed. Like, genuinely? If I'm being honest, I'm just here for the fries, the burgers, the food festivals, the 5-star desserts, and, did I mention fries? Alex blinked, clearly not prepared for my bluntness. Wait, really? I nodded, trying my best to look serious. I'm not looking for romance. I just have a deep and undying passion for food. You could be a rock star or a CEO or whatever you are, and it wouldn't change the fact that the burger here is calling my name. There was a long pause, and then, finally, Alex burst out laughing. I'm so relieved, he he said, shaking his head. I was really worried you were leading me on. Nope, I said with a grin. Just leading you to the best food in the city. The laughter between us died down, and I could see the amusement flicker in Alex's eyes, though it was quickly replaced by curiosity. So, if this is all about food, is there something I'm missing? He asked, tilting his head. Like, you really just like eating and that's it? Well, that's part of it, I said, my eyes darting around the diner. But I might have a little secret. The real reason I've been eating out with you for so long is that I'm secretly a food blogger. Alex's eyes widened. You're a food blogger? Yep, I said, nodding. But not just any food blogger. I've been documenting my meals for the super popular series called Dinners with the CEO. You've actually been featured, well, in the form of a very charming, unnamed dashing CEO, of course. His face went from confusion to realization. Wait, are you serious? I've been part of your food blog this whole time? I couldn't help but laugh at his flustered expression. I mean, I never used your name. But your dashing CEO persona has been making waves with my readers. Alex rubbed his temples, clearly trying to process this new piece of information. So, I've been unknowingly a character in your blog? Yup, I said cheerfully. It's gotten quite a following, actually. And your amazing taste in restaurants has really added to the allure. Alex's expression shifted between incredulity and amusement. Well, I've got to say, that's a new one. I feel like I should be mad, but I don't know. It's kind of funny. Funny? I asked. Is that all you've got? I think I'm more amused than anything, he admitted, laughing. I mean, I've been getting free publicity this whole time, and didn't even know it. I smiled sheepishly. I'm sorry, Alex. I really didn't mean to deceive you. I just wanted to try all the great places in the city without breaking the bank. Alex shook his head, still grinning. Well, in that case, I'm glad you're not after me for any other reason. But you know what? If you ever need a partner in food adventures, I'm not going anywhere. The realization. By the end of the meal, I was feeling something I hadn't expected, guilt mixed with relief. Yes, I'd used Alex for his restaurant connections. Yes, I'd been feeding my blog at his expense. But in all of this, I realized something important. He wasn't mad at me. And more than that, he enjoyed our time together. Maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the only one getting something out of this arrangement. Well, this has been enlightening, I said, as Alex paid the check. How's the whole dashing CEO thing sitting with you? It's a lot to digest, he said with a grin, but I think I'm good with it. Just don't expect me to start modeling for your blog. Whoa, I wouldn't dream of it, I said, chuckling. You're just here for the food, and I think that's enough for both of us. But as we left the diner, I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe there was more to this than food. After all, the way Alex had looked at me as I spoke the truth, maybe I wasn't the only one being honest about what I wanted after all. Chapter 7. The Apology Dinner. The following week passed in a haze of food reviews, frantic blog posts, and honestly, a lot of late-night snacking. But there was one thing that kept nagging at the back of my mind. Alex. Sure, we had laughed off the whole food blogger thing, but I could still sense a bit of awkwardness between us. Not that I was the romantic type to dwell on things like feelings or guilt. Nope. I was still just here for the food. But even a food lover like me could tell when a relationship was a little off. So, after some thought, and a few failed attempts to drown my guilt in donuts, I decided it was time to fix things, or at least smooth things over. The idea, a homemade dinner. I paced around my tiny apartment, trying to come up with a way to make things right with Alex and maybe, just maybe, score some extra brownie points for my food blogging reputation. It didn't take long for the answer to hit me. I'll cook for him, I muttered aloud. I'll cook him a meal so good, he'll forget that I've been using him as a walking 5-star restaurant guide for the last month. I was no chef, but I could whip up a decent meal, a little personality, a little panache, and maybe a touch of humor to cover up the chaos in the kitchen. The disaster begins. I called Alex, breathless with excitement. Hey, Alex, I've got an idea. I'm going to cook for you. No restaurants, no menus, just me, you, and a homemade meal. Wait, Alex replied, sounding intrigued but a little hesitant. You're cooking? What's the catch? No catch, I protested. Well, maybe just the fact that I'm a little bit of a disaster in the kitchen, but I promise it'll be worth it. I'm going to make something special. It was too late to back out now. The plan was set, the cooking catastrophe. I immediately got to work. My kitchen was small, cramped, and poorly equipped, but I was determined to make this meal perfect. The menu? A classic comfort food feast, mac and cheese, with a secret recipe I'd perfected over the years, garlic bread, easy enough, and a decadent chocolate lava cake for dessert. Simple, comforting, and hopefully delicious. Step 1. Boiling the pasta. Seems easy enough, right? I managed to scorch the first batch. Second batch? I forgot about it until it was practically mush. By the third attempt, the kitchen smelled like burnt pasta and despair. All right. Okay. Fine, I muttered, pacing back and forth. Maybe I should start with dessert. I whipped up the lava cake batter, after a few accidental splashes of flour on the floor, and an unfortunate egg mishap involving my kitchen floor, and popped the cakes into the oven. They were supposed to bake for 12 minutes, but I checked them early out of sheer impatience and discovered that the cakes had turned into pancake-sized puddles. Fine, I groaned. I'll go for something else. I'll just order pizza. But no, I had made a commitment, and I was going to stick to it. Alex arrives. By the time Alex knocked on my door, the entire apartment looked like a war zone. Flour everywhere, the smell of burnt garlic bread wafting through the air. The oven timer went off, announcing another batch of destroyed lava cakes. But I was determined. Hey, Alex, I said with a wide, enthusiastic smile, trying to ignore the fact that my kitchen resembled a disaster zone. He looked around, eyebrows raised. Lily, are you okay? This place looks like a food war zone. I finished for him. Yep, that's what happens when I try to cook. But hey, the thought counts, right? Alex laughed, looking genuinely entertained. Well, if it's the thought that counts, then I'd say you're really pulling this whole cooking thing off. I laughed nervously. Let me just finish up, and then we can eat. The meal, sort of. Somehow, by the time I'd gathered the pieces of my dignity and gotten the meal together, I managed to serve Alex something that vaguely resembled dinner. The mac and cheese had been rescued barely by my last minute rescue effort of adding a bit too much cheese. The garlic bread was a little more crunchy than intended, but hey, it still had garlic, so that counted for something. And the lava cakes? Well, they had turned into more of a chocolate casserole, but I was calling it a deconstructed lava cake. Bon appetit, I said, trying to sound confident as I placed the plates on the table. It's, homemade. Alex picked up his fork, cautiously poking at the mac and cheese. He took a bite, his expression unreadable. It's interesting. In a good way. It's very cheesy. I raised an eyebrow. That's a compliment, right? I mean, Alex began, it's definitely a flavor explosion in my mouth. I'm just processing it. I grinned. Great. That's exactly the response I was hoping for. The apology. After a few more bites, and several mysterious silent pauses while Alex tried to figure out what was happening with his food, we finally sat back. The meal mostly finished. My face was redder than the tomato sauce I'd accidentally spilled on the counter earlier, but Alex was smiling. So, he began, leaning back in his chair. This was definitely an experience. I winced, looking down at my half-empty plate. I'm really sorry, Alex. I wanted to make this right. I should have, I don't know, ordered from a real restaurant or something. Alex's expression softened, and he chuckled. Honestly, I think it's the effort that counts. You've definitely made me laugh, and I'm pretty sure this meal will be a story I'll tell for years to come. I smiled weakly. That's probably the best I can hope for, huh? Well, Alex said, his voice growing a little more serious. The real point is that you didn't have to do all this. You've already apologized, and I can tell you're genuinely trying to make it up to me. I appreciate that. I sighed, feeling a wave of relief. I just wanted to do something nice. I'm really sorry for using you for food material all this time, but maybe we can find a way to make this work without me turning you into the dashing CEO in my next blog post. He grinned. As long as you promise to keep me off the menu next time, I think we'll be fine. The closing moment. By the time he left, after a few more laughs, and a slightly more successful attempt at dessert, the chocolate casserole was surprisingly good. I felt like the weight of my guilt had finally lifted, and for the first time since I'd started this whole foodie adventure, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, there was more to this whole relationship thing than I had originally bargained for. After all, Alex might not have been the meal ticket I had expected, but maybe, just maybe, he was the dessert. Chapter 8. The Unexpected Confession. The following week, I couldn't stop thinking about the dinner disaster. As much as I tried to tell myself it was just another culinary misstep, and let's face it, there'd be more. I couldn't help but replay every awkward moment. Still, Alex had seemed genuinely amused, and there was something comforting in the way he didn't judge me too harshly for my complete lack of kitchen prowess. At least, that's what I told myself while stuffing my face with street tacos from a food truck that seemed to be an hour away from completely falling apart. The blog revelation? It wasn't until a few days later that I started getting notifications for my blog. Usually, it was just a few likes here and there. But this time it was different. I had hundreds of views. I opened my laptop, expecting some food blogger competition to be gaining ground, or maybe a viral meme about burnt garlic bread. But no, it was my post, the one about dinners with a CEO. I blinked. The title one had originally thought was cute, something about dating a CEO, but secretly here for the 5-star meals was now on fire. And to my horror, the comments had exploded. Who's the CEO? Can I date him too? Are they for real? Is he really this charming? Or is Lily just a food snob? I stared at the screen, wide-eyed, realizing something. I had never actually revealed his name. I had written the entire thing without mentioning Alex's identity, and yet, somehow, everyone knew it was him. Bah-oh, I muttered to myself, staring at the screen. This wasn't just a post anymore, it was a full-blown spectacle. The comments weren't just asking about Alex's food opinions, they were asking about his relationship status, his favorite meals, and most shockingly, his romantic potential. Great, this was just the kind of attention I was hoping to avoid. The confrontation. Later that evening, I found myself sitting across from Alex again, feeling strangely self-conscious. My blog had started buzzing with excitement about dashing CEO, and the thought of him finding out had kept me up the whole night. Hey, Alex, I began, stirring my glass of water a little too vigorously. I wanted to talk to you about something. Alex looked up from his phone with a slight furrow in his brow. Sure, what's up? About my blog, I said, shifting uncomfortably in my seat. You know, the one where I write about our dinners. His eyes narrowed. What about it? I hesitated. Well, it's kind of gone viral. Alex didn't say anything for a moment, processing the information before breaking into a grin. Oh, really? That's unexpected. I felt a pit form in my stomach. Yeah. So, I might have written about you. And the fact that you're the dashing CEO, and well, I didn't mention your name because, you know, privacy and all. But, it's become kind of a thing. And people are obsessed with you. Alex leaned back, his smirk growing. People are obsessed with me? Well, now I have to know what they're saying about me. I winced, bracing myself for his reaction. I mean, they're asking about your dating life, and what you eat for breakfast, and it's kind of awkward. He raised an eyebrow. Why is that awkward? I think it's kind of funny. I stared at him, perplexed. You think it's funny? You're not mad. He chuckled, shaking his head. Mad? No. Honestly, I kind of think it's hilarious. I'm being documented as the perfect date. That's probably the best marketing for my brand that I've gotten in years. I gaped at him. You're not upset? You know this blog is making you sound like a total heartthrob, right? Well, I don't mind it. But here's the thing, Lily, he said, suddenly serious. I know what you've been doing. You've been using me for your food blog. I stiffened. I mean, yes. I've been using our meals for content, but it's not like I'm writing personal stuff about you. Right, and that's what's got me curious, Alex said, leaning forward. Because the more I think about it, the more I wonder, how much of me did you really see during our dinners? I froze. What do you mean? He smiled. I think you've been so focused on the food, you haven't noticed the other part, the part where I actually enjoy spending time with you. Not because of the meals, but because of you. And I'm starting to wonder if maybe, just maybe, there's a bit more between us than just food. The revelation. It hit me like a freight train. I hadn't even seen it coming. The romantic tension had been so subtle, so hidden behind the veil of our shared love for fancy dinners and snarky critiques. I had missed every single sign. I blinked a few times, trying to process what he was saying. Wait, you? Yeah, Alex said, his voice softening. I've been trying to figure it out. Why I'm always excited for our next meal, even when I know it'll end up as another chaotic food adventure. The thing is, I'm starting to think it's not just the food that makes it fun. I stared at him, still trying to wrap my mind around his words. Wait, you're saying you're into me? Alex's smile was playful, but there was an edge of sincerity there that caught me off guard. Yeah, I am. The realization. I let his words sink in for a moment before I finally spoke, my voice tentative. Okay, this is definitely unexpected. Alex chuckled. Well, life is full of surprises, but I'm being serious. I've liked you from the start, Lily, and now I'm wondering if maybe there's more to our foodie adventures than just the meals. I blinked at him, unable to keep a smile from forming on my face. Well, that definitely wasn't what I expected. You, a CEO, falling for a woman who has the culinary skills of a confused raccoon. Hey, Alex teased, "Don't sell yourself short. You've got a knack for food critiques. That's got to count for something." And just like that, everything changed. I had started this journey with no intention of falling for anyone, least of all the guy I had been dragging around the city for meals. But now, with Alex sitting across from me, the idea of food, well, it wasn't just food anymore. It was a new kind of connection. And suddenly, I was okay with that. Story ends. Thanks for listening. See you again for another silly story.